Video. View. Gallery view. Okay. Oh, it's Krista. Oh, a lot of folk here. That's good. One new message. It's 1 o'clock, isn't it?
Hello.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Richard.
Hello. Good
Good
afternoon.
to see everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're going to start right now, as a matter of fact. So, as we said, we're going to start on time. So, welcome to the Journal-isms Roundtable. Good to see everyone here, and also those who are on Facebook Live. My name is Richard Prince. I write a column called Journal-isms, Journal-isms, which is at journal-isms.com. The Journal-isms Roundtable has been in existence since 1999. We meet monthly. We usually, until the pandemic, met at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. But since the pandemic began, we've been doing Zoom, and that has enabled us to get people who are not in Washington as part of this this fabulous event. So let me begin. Happy spring also, everybody. Yesterday was the first day of spring. So let me make sure to get that in. I want to start off though by remembering and paying tribute to some people who a lot of us know who have passed on in the last few weeks. And we're going to do that by doing what I understand is an African tradition of saying the name of the person 3 times. So I want to start off with Paul Brock, who was 89 years old and who was the first executive director of the National Association of Black Journalists and was active throughout. So let's say his name in unison 3 times. Paul Brock.
Paul Brock.
Paul Brock.
Paul Brock.
Paul Brock.
Paul Brock.
Paul Brock. All right. A few days before Paul passed on, the young editor of the Atlanta Voice, Marshall Lattimore, passed at age 36 in Atlanta. And we want to lift him up as well. So let's say together, Marshall Lattimore. Marshall Lattimore. Marshall Lattimore. Marshall
Lattimore.
Okay. And the third person is someone that most of us know who passed away in January at age 55, Brian Monroe, who was a president of the National Association of Black Journalists, an executive at Knight Ridder, and just a person who was active in our industry. So let's lift up Brian Monroe. Brian Monroe. Brian Monroe. All right, thank you very much. Okay. Moving along, we're going to save the introductions for the end, but I do want to acknowledge people who are with the Ida B. Wells Society. This is our next generation of investigative journalists, and they were kind enough to pass along the notice of this meeting. So I don't know whether they're all here yet, but if any Ida B. Wells Society members are here, please raise your hands so we can see you. Okay, great. There's Erica. And I have another screen here too. Okay. All right. People will be joining as we go along. And there's so many people I want to shout out, but we want to wait till the end because that would take up too long. All right. We wanted to introduce everybody to 2 folks who are here, and we want them to be able to tell us a little about who they are and what they would like us to know. First one is Babee Garcia. I know we have some people who are veterans. It's a declining number, but who are journalists, and they have started an organization for such folks, aiming to increase their numbers. So, Babee, why don't you tell us just a little bit about that?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Babee Garcia. I am a Marine Corps veteran and journalist in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm a news producer for CBS 19 News. And I am also a senior leader for military veterans in journalism. We launched in 2019, and we have a growing population of over 400 members so far. And we're just really trying to get veterans hired into America's newsrooms. We're really just trying to convince employers that these skills and experiences within our military community, we have what it takes to work in a fast-paced, disciplined environment like a newsroom. And from our members, we currently have, like I said, over 400 members. We have about 9% who are of minority races and 15% identify as females. And my current role is the director of digital strategy and content. So I'm currently running the social media platforms. I'm researching job opportunities. I'm partnering with organizations such as the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, the NABJ, and just trying to see if we can cater our events, programs, training opportunities for other populations aside from the veteran community. I mean, we are, just trying to expand our community, making sure that, we are presenting opportunities for women veterans who are interested in journalism, veterans of color, military spouses.
Well, Babee, tell me this, what are we missing by not having more veterans in the newsroom?
Oh, I can go on and on. I mean, we are familiar, one, with rank structure, just terminology that, other civilian journalists may not understand when it comes to covering the military beat. And also we have veterans who are covering the military, like Paul Zorja, and he is the editor-in-chief of Task and Purpose, who's doing an amazing job running a team of veterans and non-veterans covering the military. So that's just one of many examples. But, just making sure that, we're knowing terms such as decorated and undecorated, non-decorated veterans, and, knowing about deployments, detachments, what ranks and terms are associated within different branches of the military, and attention to detail, making sure that before we publish something, we have, the integrity and accuracy already down pat. So we are, like I said before, we have been trained to work in a fast-paced environment as it is. And we had to cross our T's and dot the I's even before we step foot into a newsroom. So we really need to, expand our newsrooms further, and making sure that employers know that, we have value into working in your newsroom.
Okay, well, this is just another aspect of diversity, having veterans. Anybody has any questions or comments for Babee, please use the chat room. I think I said before, I should say it again, that this is primarily, we know we have people speaking with us. This is primarily a networking event. And so in lieu of being there in person to network, we have our chat room. So please feel free to do that. The next person I wanted to introduce is Anthony Coley. Are you here, Anthony? Oh, there you are. Okay, great.
I'm here.
Yeah, he is now in charge of all the public affairs work for the Justice Department under Merrick Garland. And we go back a long ways, he tells me, because he's been, well, he can tell you all the various things he's been involved in. And we just want people to know who he is and him to know who we are. So Anthony, give us a few minutes.
Well, thank you, Richard, and good afternoon, everybody. It's exciting to be here with you, to see some familiar faces. I just saw Michael on the query pop up as well. He and I go back to my time working on the Hill. I'm not going to take a lot of your time, but I did thought it would be it's important for me to just stop by and to say hello. I'm about 4 weeks, maybe 5 into this job, running public affairs for the Department of Justice. I'm actually here at DOJ right now on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. But I tell you, there is no place I would rather be. I believe the reason I came back into government is because I believe that this is a special time in American history. And we have an opportunity with Attorney General Merrick Garland. Hopefully soon we'll have the Senate confirmed nominees, Vanita Gupta joining us. I think many of you know Vanita Gupta. Kristen Clark is the president's nominee to head up civil rights. She will be the first woman, not just woman of color, but the first woman in this position. So we've got a lot of to do here at DOJ to make sure that the laws of our country are fairly and faithfully enforced, and that the rights of everyone are protected. So Richard, I'm going to stop because I grew up right around this time. I grew up in rural North Carolina, right around 1 o'clock in church. And so I could go on and on right now, but I'm going to pause. I'm going to stay around. If anybody wants to chat with me, I can be long-winded, but I just literally just wanted to stop. And Richard, maybe at some point at the next 1 or 2 of these, I can come back and perhaps others from DOJ can come back and talk to you all what we are up to here at DOJ. There are a lot of issues that a lot of people care about. Criminal justice reform is at the top of the list. Civil rights matters at the top of the list. We're excited I'm excited to be here more specifically. I'm excited to have an opportunity to continue this dialogue in the weeks and months ahead.
All right, thank you. And feel free, everybody, to use the chat. Now we're going to talk about, I think I mentioned in my note how impressed I was with seeing Al Tompkins at an event partly organized by Lynn Adrian, I guess 2 Saturdays ago now, on the very topic we're here to discuss, and that is how journalists can challenge and understand and combat disinformation. So Al works for the Poynter Institute, as I'm sure most of us know. And this issue of disinformation transcends politics. We also see it in the coverage of COVID, and even went down to the local level. Oh, something happened on my screen here. Okay. Oh, I see. He's got his material ready. Where it wasn't just at the federal level. There was an election that took place in Stockton, California, where the incumbent mayor, who was the youngest and the first Black mayor, was defeated by an unknown who just spread lies that people picked up on out in Stockton. So take it away, Al.
When Richard calls me, I always say yes, but I also want to acknowledge that my former president and dean, Karen Dunlap, is on this call. And Lynn, who is also on this call, is teaching a course for us, with us, on implicit bias. So it's like old home week for Poynter people here. So Richard wanted me to spend just a little time saying to you guys what I'm saying to journalists around. And I wanted to show you some new tools that are making their way into the disinformation world right now. And it's going to make your job, our job as journalists, unbelievably more difficult. So Richard, if you would also be monitoring the chat, if anybody wants to ask questions, they can either flip on their microphone or throw in questions, because I'm going to show you how some things work and some of the things that we've got to be looking for. So I usually start by saying, Richard, since your microphone is on, would you agree, Richard, that this is an apple?
Yes, it's an apple.
Yes,
it looks like an apple.
And so most of us would say, well, of course it's an apple. And if I would say, is it a whole apple? I think a reasonable person would say, of course it's a whole apple. What are you asking me? And then I would say, well, are you sure? And you would say, well, maybe. And I would say, well, what else do you need to know? And you would say, well, am I seeing the whole apple? And the answer is no. The answer is no. because half of it is eaten. It's just that you didn't know that. And I only show this to you because I'm going to use this as an analogy later to show you what happens with disinformation. But the problem for us is that seeing isn't understanding. Seeing is merely believing. And there's a difference between fact and truth. And the difference is context. So as I always say, accuracy plus context equals truth. And I think it's the central lesson for us in 2021 as journalists, just to remember that facts without context do not equal truth. Let me give you an example. This video made its way around social media quite a lot. Let me just play 5 seconds of it. And if I were to ask, I think a reasonable person would say, this just doesn't sound right. In fact, when I started showing that video in my living room, I was playing around with the video, and I said to my wife, what do you think this is? And she says, gosh, it either sounds like Nancy Pelosi is drunk or maybe she's had a stroke. And obviously the video was staged in a way that made us believe that there must be something going on with whatever it is she's drinking, because she sounds, my wife said, irregular. And I think that's charitable. So the question is really what's going on here? And the first question is, what are other people are saying? And any reasonable person would type in Nancy Pelosi drunk or Nancy Pelosi drinking or slurring, and you would find a number of fact checks. And they would all say, no, that's not true. But there are other ways for us to do this. And I talk about it all the time. Go to the original source. And that's exactly what I did. Went to C-SPAN and pulled the video. And you will see that that's not what it sounded like at all.
We're not hearing the audio.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me know that, and I can fix that. But I'm going to have to quit sharing just for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm going to demonstrate audio, it'd be nice if you could hear the audio. Let me give you the original.
I'm sorry, to do what?
To accuse a TV host of murder on Twitter.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
All right. So the question is sort of, what other people are saying. And as I said, other people are saying that's not the original. Here's the original.
Yes. Is it appropriate for the president to do that on Twitter? Or to do that in general?
You're asking me about the appropriateness of the action.
Okay. So what's going on here? And how did somebody take the original audio and make it look like she was drunk? The answer is they used an audio edit program, a slow motion program, and here's how fast it is. I'll do it for you in real time. I'm just going to take that clip, drop it into Adobe Premiere, but you could use any editing suite that you want. And I'm going to simply...
The United States. So completely.
Okay, so let's slow that video audio down. I'm just going to click on the timeline. I'm going to go down to speed duration, and let's take it down to 80%. Now, what it's going to do is slow it down.
You're asking me.
But you don't believe that because the pitch is wrong. So you can automatically change the pitch.
That's the way it is.
And make it completely believable.
That's what he comes in with.
So even though it's slow-mo,
Doggy do on his
I retain her voice pitch. And that's exactly how they did it. So in less than 15 seconds, you've taken a video, you've altered it, slowed it down 20%, but it's imperceptible because you didn't change the audio pitch. And prior to this kind of software, you would have had to do a lot of manipulation with it. It would have been much more difficult. But that's one reason why you see so many of these questionable videos now, is because these kinds of edit programs make it possible to maintain pitch and still slow down video. All right. Here's another thing that's going on. So Adobe Premiere is one thing, but Adobe Photoshop is something that you guys have used all along. And Photoshop has had a tool for quite a while that allows you to change things, photographs, but it's a program called Content Aware Fill. It's a part of Photoshop. Content aware fill used to have a real big problem, and that is it would pick up what are called artifacts. When you changed a photograph, it was perceptible. You'd be able to see the change. But now content aware fill actually has intuitive artifact removal. Watch this. So my wife and I got sort of entranced while we were taking a vacation at the number of people who were carving things into trees and stuff. So I'm just going to take the cursor and get rid of some of the things on this photograph. And it replaces whatever I get rid of with what it intuits would normally be there. And in some cases, even puts a different carving. Let's get rid of the D and just make it I heart me. Boom. And so content aware fill now allows you to have a much more believable alteration of a photograph because it is putting in what it believes was there. But wait, there's more. You can also remove entire objects with just a click. It already intuits what you're trying to get rid of. So let's get rid of the girl on the left with just one click. All we have to do is one click. It'll say, oh, it looks like you're trying to get rid of her. And it gets rid of her. One click. And it puts bushes in the background. But there's one bush in the background there that you'll see is not very believable. So what you can do is hit content aware fill, and you can say, no, I want that other bush right there in where that circle is. And with one click, it'll put a much more believable background. So in less than 5 seconds, I've removed the woman and put a better looking bush in the background. So it's completely imperceptible. That's one reason why it's going to be so difficult for you to detect fakes in the future. But wait, there's more. Now content aware fill also intuits not just what you want to remove, but what you want to add. So let's say I've got a butterfly with a broken wing. If you define the wing, it'll say, oh, it looks like you wanted a whole wing. And it will actually look at the other wing and put a similar wing back on your butterfly.
Okay.
So it's looking for ways to add, not just subtract. This is your nightmare because you won't know to look for this. But wait, there's more. Content aware fill now shows up in their video program. Again, this is Adobe product called Adobe Premiere, and Adobe Premiere After Effects now allows you to do in one click what you only could do in post-production, and it would take me hours to do. So in this case, I'm going to have a horse, a rider, a shadow, and an ocean. And what you're going to see is the horse and the rider are going to be running from right to left. And all I'm going to do is the same thing I did with those still pictures. And this time I'm going to get rid of the horse, the rider, and the shadow, but I'm going to continue having the ocean move. So let's do that. Let's just get rid of what I want to get rid of. And now the ocean continues to move. The shot continues to move. You can even see the hoof prints being made in the sand, but there is no horse, there is no shadow, and there is no rider. And this, once again, took seconds to do, whereas it would have taken hours to do if you could have done it believably at all prior to this. This is the brand new Adobe Premiere After Effects Content Aware Fill. And this is going to make it very, very difficult to look at with your eyes, just look at something and know whether or not it's been manipulated. This is the future of disinformation. We're quite used to looking at photos and asking whether or not they were real, but now we can look at video and have the exact same questions. I always tell people just because you believe it doesn't make it true. And I want to show you part of what's going on right now with disinformation, and particularly COVID, because there's so much of it. So this was a woman named Patricia from Austin, Texas. It's a real case, and she was part of the Pfizer drug trial. And Patricia decided that she was going to document her procedure and her after effects after she was vaccinated or participated in the trial. Not long after she was one of the 40,000 people involved in this trial, she posted photographs of her foot. Now, I've spared you because some of you just finished eating lunch or eating lunch now. I've spared you actually looking at this unbelievable sore on her foot. But trust me, it is really nasty. And so I put the white dot over top of her. But she documented this photograph of this horrible sore on her foot. And lo and behold, she got another sore on the other foot. And so the rumor started because of her documentation that the vaccine may have caused these horrific sores, and people were very concerned about it. One doctor actually told her that it might be a drug reaction, and she documented all of this with doctor's notes. I mean, completely believable. Nobody challenges whether or not this happened. She posted that on her social media page and then launched a GoFundMe account that raised more than $5,000 from 100 people because she had real medical bills, and nobody doubts that. It was shared thousands and thousands of times, and Pfizer got so concerned about it that it actually opened up its blind study file, something that it never does. And when I say never, I really do mean almost never. But they could see this was something that was really rolling. So it turns out that Patricia didn't get the vaccine. She got the placebo. She got the saline shot. And so there was no actual connection between the vaccine and her sores. Now, she actually did have these sore feet, but it wasn't the vaccine that caused it. But by then, the story was global. In fact, I first ran across this on The Guardian, of the British newspaper. And even today, if you were to Google Patricia vaccine or Patricia Austin vaccine, you would come up with this story because it's everywhere. You can't put this genie back in the bottle. This is the kind of misinformation that comes from the vaccine story that all of us have to be more aware of, and that is the cause and effect that we all are trying to draw. Correlation and causation is the phrase that we often bring up, and people are always looking for correlation and causation. So much so that people often say, oh my goodness, look at all the stories about people who have died after getting the vaccine. And they're all over the world, from Norway and Portugal and you name it, California, Florida, Virginia, people who have gotten the vaccine and subsequently died. And I've become really interested in this because there's so many stories about people dying after they get the vaccine that I've been pulling data on this very issue. Here's an example of what we can do as journalists around disinformation. First of all, know that about 24% of all adult deaths occur in nursing homes right now. So about 1 in 4 of us die in nursing homes in the United States, and that number is going up. Increasingly, the chances are good, better and better and better that you're going to die in some sort of extended care, long-term care nursing home. That's what we do now. So the next question is, how long do most of us last in a nursing home? Okay, so those of us of a certain age, there is a certain reality, isn't there, Richard, that when you go to a nursing home, the clock is running and you're not going to be there forever. And so the median survival time in nursing homes is 2.2 years. That was kind of shocking, I have to say. And the yearly mortality rate is 31%. In other words, they have a 31% churn in nursing homes. About a third of all the people in nursing homes die over the course of a year. Again, a fairly shocking number, but those are the real numbers. So we tend to go into nursing homes when we're sort of on our last leg, right? So know this: when you get to a nursing home, you're probably going to die there, and you're not going to be there that long. I mean, that's just the cold, hard truth of it. So we shouldn't be surprised that out of 1.3 million long-term care patients who have been vaccinated, statistically, you would expect about 11,440 deaths per month in those nursing homes. I'm going to let you take that in for a second. So if you have 1.3 million people in long-term care facilities, you would expect, at 22%, you would expect 11,440 of those people to die just from whatever it is they're going to die from. But here's what's really interesting. In this one study done by Brown University and the National Institute of Aging, there was only 129 people who died and had been vaccinated. In other words, the people who were vaccinated were dying at a much slower, lower rate than the people who were not vaccinated. Now, that doesn't mean that the vaccine is saving lives. It just means there's no proof. In fact, there's no proof that the vaccine is causing people to die. The truth is, people who get the vaccine die because, you know what? They were going to die anyway because they're old and they got stuff going on. So this is the sort of thing that we as journalists have to talk about. And particularly, and one reason I really, really wanted to be here is because so many of you have credible voices with the under-vaccinated populations in the United States. We've got to do a better job of communicating this. We've got to do a better job. What was their cause of death, by the way, of those who died? I looked it up. It's exactly what you would expect it to be. Heart failure, heart failure, heart failure, heart failure. You have to go all the way down the list to get to a kidney failure. We know what people die of. They die of heart failure. Number one cause of death in the United States. All right, what about the 23 who died in Norway? This all but stopped the vaccines in the nursing homes in Norway. I pulled the data on that one. Every day, an average of 45 people die in Norwegian nursing homes or other similar institutions. It's therefore to be expected that deaths will occur soon after vaccination without there necessarily being a causal link to the vaccine. It's kind of hard to hear, but the truth is 45 people a day die in Norwegian nursing homes. So you're going to have people who are vaccinated who are going to die because they would have died anyway.
Mhm.
Gibraltar was another place where people were dying, and people went nuts in Gibraltar. 11,000 people vaccinated, 6 people died. 6 vaccinated people died. And every one of those people who died was between 70 and 100 years old. Richard, would it be normal for a person 70 to 100 years old die? Yes.
Mhm.
But that's not what made the headlines. What made the headlines is people are dying. Yes, they are. And they died before the COVID too. Remember, before you assume or share or believe or comment, check to see if anybody else has gotten to the root of the data, and then go beyond what happened to ask why and how we know. So one more. Let's see, Fred, because you have awesome glasses on, can you turn your microphone on just for a second, Fred?
It's on, Al.
There he is, man. All right. So, Fred, I'm going to give you 3 versions of the same question. You tell us how these 3 questions are different. How honest do you think the WHO has been about COVID? How dishonest do you think WHO has been about COVID? How frustrated are you, Fred, with how dishonest WHO has been about COVID? What's the difference in these 3 questions?
Well, the 3 has answered for me.
In what way is it answered for you?
It's telling me I'm frustrated. Number
exactly.
one.
Well, look, we already know they've been dishonest. How mad does that make you? Right. It's a leading question. What about number 2? Is that a leading question as well?
It is.
In what way?
Well, how dishonest do I think? Who said they were dishonest?
Very good. So we've established they're dishonest. How dishonest were they? You know, if you were to watch me teaching today and I had my cup up, you might ask, how drunk were you while you were teaching, right? And you wouldn't leave open the possibility that that was coffee. What about number 1?
Well, how honest do I think the World Health Organization has been about COVID? Well, I believe the science. I mean, that's not as bad as the other 2. I don't.
It's not as bad. Yeah, it's like the tallest mountain in Iowa, right? It's not as bad, but it's still raising a question, isn't it? It's still raising. You're raising the question of honesty, and you're planting the idea that could be questioned, and that's one of the problems that we have when we search for words in Google. So, for example, if we go to Google and we put in COVID facts, you're going to get returns that are factual. But if you put in how honest are people about how honest is WHO, then you're going to get conspiracy theories because it's going to address the honesty question.
Right.
So one of the things for us to realize is that we have to ask straightforward factual questions if what we want is straightforward factual information. So in the 60 seconds I have left, let me do one more thing. Because Oprah is all things TV right now. I just thought this was such an amazing piece of video. And I'm going to play just a little of this.
Can she see me yet?
I can.
This is pretty cool technology you got here. So let me try to. We're playing footsies. We should have done this in outer space. We could have both been sitting on like Neptune in a bubble.
Hello, President Barack Obama.
Hey, you, how are you?
I'm so good. You're in Washington, D.C., and I'm home in Santa Barbara. But through the miracle of technology, we get to be face to face in the same room.
Isn't that incredible? I wouldn't have guessed, and I don't trust anything. I would never have guessed that this was green screen, but it is. And this is so common now that people are using these really sophisticated Hollywood quality green screens that it's placing people in virtually the same area, and they're not even in the same time zone. So I think any reasonable person would have said, absolutely, they were sitting in front of a fireplace. I saw them. It's yet another piece of technology, Richard, that's going to make our life as disinformation detectors even more difficult. And so it's important for us to ask, not just what did I see, but what didn't I understand about what I saw? Because technology is going to make it so much more difficult in the future. So I hope that's helpful.
It is. It is. We got just a couple of questions in the
Sure.
In the chat room I wanted to ask. One is from Roger Witherspoon. He wants to know, what are the legitimate uses of this technology, and how do we detect this?
All right. So the legitimate use of the technology for using a content-aware fill, for example, there is no journalistic use of that I would defend. And there are photojournalists in this group here, or people who are editors in this group. Lynn teaches journalists all the time. I can't think of any legitimate journalistic use of removing something and calling it journalism. I can't think of any legitimate use of it.
Well, not at all. I was just noting that Adobe Premiere was not designed solely for the use of journalists. So you have to be aware of that. That's why that technology is there. That the people are doing it for other production techniques. But once it's out there, then people can use it for anything. I don't think it has any legitimate journalistic use.
Yeah, let's keep in mind that, Richard, these things do drop metadata. So it is possible for us to look at the video, go up to file info, and see whether or not there is metadata that tells us whether or not it's been messed with, but it's possible to erase or change the metadata. So even that's not foolproof. But it's a question that we have to ask. If we're not looking at the original file, then what are we looking at?
Okay. Roger has one follow-up. How would you equate the misuse of the term safe when it comes to vaccines? The common flu vaccine, for example, is said to be safe, though its effective rate is just 29%, and some recipients will catch the disease from the vaccine.
Okay, so there are two major differences here. One is safe and efficacy are safe, efficacy, and effectiveness are three very different things. So safe means that it's reasonably safe and won't cause subsidiary harm. Efficacy and effectiveness have to do with whether or not it actually is preventative in the way that we mean for it to be. Realize that the flu vaccine, the common flu vaccine, has an efficacy rate of less than 70% most years. That means that about 3 out of 10 people who are exposed to the flu might still get it. And remember that the flu vaccine is a live virus. These vaccines that we get from Moderna and Pfizer are mRNA, which means they are not live virus. What they're doing is stimulating your system to create an immunity. So it's a very new technology. You won't get COVID from an mRNA virus, because that's not a live virus going in there. It's tricking your system into responding.
All right. I'm told that the Congresswoman is here, and so she's ready to go. She can't stay so long.
Richard, thank you for letting me come play. You're a pioneer, and you've been around a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. But please stick around if you can. I want to bring on the delegate from the Congresswoman from the Virgin Islands, who everybody knows by now from the impeachment hearings, Stacey Plaskett, and then Mike Webb from the News Literacy Organization, and Monica Richardson, the new editor of the Miami Herald and El Nuevo Herald and other McClatchy papers in Florida. So I want to ask, all right, since Congresswoman Plaskett has to leave first, what she takes away from this in letting us know about how we should be covering disinformation, and also how did disinformation come up in the impeachment hearings and the surrounding events?
Hi, so thanks so much for having me.
Yes.
Thank everybody for participating in this on a Sunday afternoon,
Yes.
right as spring has begun. I think the issue of disinformation is something, and I'm really glad that we're talking about it, is absolutely critical in society right now. I think it came up in the impeachment from its very inception, through the notion of the big lie, as we called it, that the former president, President Donald Trump, was able to use misinformation, disinformation in a manner that was actually able to infiltrate general society and utilize that to drum up support for the notion that he had actually won the election. When we have our intelligence agencies, law enforcement agencies, his own cabinet members all saying that actually there was no fraud and abuse in the election, that the election itself was one of the safest elections in American history. But yet through that misinformation and disinformation, the president was able to get tens of thousands of people, millions of people to believe that he had actually won the election, which in turn was utilized by him to begin to have lawsuits, to exert pressure on elected officials, on election officials, to get other members of Congress to have to agree with him and object to the certification of the election. And eventually, when all of those avenues had failed, to actually lead to violence.
What could we as journalists have done about that? And what should we be taking away from that?
One of the things I think that we've seen through what we're calling now the normalization post-Trump is not so much journalism, but social media platforms being much more careful about what information they're allowing to be on those platforms. And I think that that is very, very critical to us having correct information. The other is not normalizing lies and having the ability, you all having the ability as journalists to speak to untruths and to call them untruths when they're untruths, to call them lies and to give that the contrary real information or the truth in the journalism, to juxtapose it to those theories and those conspiracy theories that are actually lies. I think that that's really important. I can't tell you how many you all were talking about COVID, you know, in communities of color, in African-American communities, the amount of disinformation that is out there is stifling us from getting to herd immunity in Black communities, in the communities that need it most, where people are actually on the front lines. And we see that was in the same case that happened during the election itself. Let's not forget that even before the election, during the Democratic primary, one of the primary targets of misinformation and disinformation that was spewed all over social media was against who is now our Vice President, Kamala Harris. That law enforcement really recognized that the Russian bots, Russian information was really targeted to her specifically as a candidate and really kind of misconstruing her previous record as a prosecutor. And what was also frustrating was finding journalists who latched on to that and attempted to, you know, make news based on something that was based on misinformation. And that's a concern I know as a politician I have, is our journalists checking stories? Are journalists going to the individuals who are the target of misinformation and asking them for the truth and trying to find that out and getting the truth out to the community that relies on you all, that really trusts the information that you put out? Or are we jumping on what's the new and trying to, gain Twitter followers and others by having that which is the most provocative and sounds the most interesting?
In other words, we've been sloppy. All right.
Is that what you guys call it?
Sloppy and lazy. Okay. Monica, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Richard. I appreciate being here, and thank you, Al. So, Al said a few things that stuck out for me. He said, go to the source. He said, I looked it up. He said, I asked the question. And the very first thing I think we have to do to combat what we're experiencing is, one, first, not always be on the defensive of it, like look at what's happening to us and look at how we're suffering at the hands of disinformation. But we've got to be on the offensive, and part of that is excellence in journalism. Excellence at the core, like the beginning, like the research, the reporting, the relationships we have with our audience and our sources. And without that, that's the very beginning, right? And I think there's an assumption sometimes that, journalists get to a certain level, and I'm in a newsroom of legacy journalists, but you can't stop talking about the basics of journalism and why it's so critical, because that is our greatest weapon for combating this. The second piece is holding places like Adobe accountable, right? We've done it with Facebook, we've done it with Google. We are working hard to hold the industry accountable for delivering tools like this and technology like this that works against journalism, works against credible journalism. I think it's important for even us to make sure we are making smart use of technology and smart use of sources, what we have in our tools to tell our stories in different ways. It's about not just sharing numbers, but letting people, showing it, letting people see the numbers for themselves, and then sharing lived experiences to go with that, to back that up. Rethinking our approach to how we deliver content. It can't just be in the stories. We have to meet people where they are. And if they are on social media, if they're in platforms, it's not just people we're combating, it's social bots, right? That things are popping up and information is popping up in ways that we have to have a multi-pronged offense approach to how we to tackle this. And the other thing I would say is I think it helps for us to have partnerships in the space of research and labs, our universities that are taking on these topics. And it really is a multi-pronged thing. And I think that it starts with the basics and the excellence of journalism, but then just rethinking how we deliver content. One of the things the Miami Herald did just before the 2020 elections was something called an ad decoder. And it analyzed advertising, political advertising, and it called out, as Congresswoman said, called out disinformation, called out what was wrong, called it a lie. I think we have to think about it in everything that we do and the language that we use in our stories. So I won't take time from someone else, but it really has to be a multi-pronged approach to how we are delivering and gathering content. When I talked about meeting people where they are, we recently started working with a company called Subtext. And we, in the topic of COVID, are texting people information, like having a two-way conversation. What is the question you have about COVID? And that is a credible relationship that we have with someone, and we are going to true source and then delivering that information back. And that is a way of using technology to deal one-on-one with someone who has a question. They type in a question in Google, how do I blah, 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 or how do I find information about the vaccine? How do I get this about the vaccine? What do I know? But if we are able to establish and use tools that give us a direct relationship to have those conversations, I think it makes it more powerful for us in our walk with this. So I know I've said a lot, Richard, but I'm I go back to the most important thing Al said was go to the source, look it up, ask the question. And that, as simple as that seems, I think sometimes we realize we have to sacrifice things. We have to sacrifice being first on a story. We may have to make other sacrifices to making sure that we can go back to the basics and get people the information they need in a credible way.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to get to Mike Webb in a second about news literacy and how that fits into this. But since Representative Plaskett has to leave soon, I'll ask this question from Jim Ascendio. He wants to, and let me just say that a lot of us are here in the District of Columbia, and so we have a special sensitivity to statehood, not being able to vote, and all of that. So he wants to know, how likely is statehood for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he's living down there now that DC statehood is once again brought to the forefront?
Sure. Can I just say, based just something, a thought that came to me when Monica was speaking, was that this responsibility that you were talking about, Richard, in terms of misinformation and disinformation, is not just for journalists, but it's also a responsibility that I feel as an elected official. And I think that elected officials have moved away from that as well. I'm constantly, when I speak to my staff and giving a speech, always ground what I say, even a 1 minute, in statistics, in facts, in data that supports the argument that I'm going to make, and really try and shy away and be careful about even putting in Twitter comments which are not substantiated in fact, that may be my opinion, but may not, be kind of on the line of, is this real? Is this true? Do we know that that really happened? Or are we just going based on what's already out there? Are we retweeting something and adding a quote to it, and that makes it more grounded in truth because I'm saying it, as opposed to making sure that that's actually factual? And I think there's this drive, even among politicians, to grow their constituency outside of then just the people that have elected you, but to be an influencer, if you will. And that can really be detrimental in some respects to making sure that truth is being disseminated in a responsible way. Members of Congress are, we're in some ways driven by campaign finance, right? We have elections coming up and we've got to grow our influence. A lot of that is driven by finances. And so having, those low dollar individuals supporting your campaign in some ways has to happen through Twitter or through your influence that you can have by giving in what used to be passionate speeches, but in some ways are incendiary and may not always be grounded in statistics. And I know I try and stay away from that, but I can see the influence that that can have over even members of Congress that can be problematic. So I just wanted to put that out there, that you journalists don't only have the responsibility, but we as elected officials, I think, have a great responsibility in how we're putting information out there. And I see every day now in Congress how further and further we are moving away from that. As for statehood, it's a really very interesting question as to whether or not the Virgin Islands, it's kind of like a chicken and egg question. In a lot of ways, people would say, well, you're really a small, in terms of population, your economy has not grown in such a way that would allow you to seem like you're mature enough to be a state. But are we that way because of the status that we're in, because we are a colony, because we have not been given the support necessary to grow ourselves into being in a position where we can be states, right? You look at before from the Northwest Ordinance prior to that, every place that was considered a territory, the understanding was that eventually they would be a state. And the federal government gave such financial support and economic stimulants to those areas so that they would find themselves in a position to be a state, whether that's bringing, the Homestead Act, making it feasible for individuals to come there and farm, or creating incentives for businesses to be there. While in the 1950s and 60s, even the 70s, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands had those tax incentives and those programs, it was actually called Operation Bootstrap, which would allow us to grow our economies. Much of those laws were stripped away. Much of those regulations were never renewed in the 1990s, which in some instances can go directly to the level of unemployment, the level of depression that you find in places like Guam, Northern Marianas, the Virgin Islands, and specifically Puerto Rico. You look at the manufacturing industry in Puerto Rico. Because Congress elected not to renew some of those laws that brought the pharmaceutical companies there, 40% of the unemployment is directly tied to those laws, therefore being sunsetting and not coming back up. So the question of should the Virgin Islands be a state is one that we're really thinking about right now. And I find it so very interesting when I immediately hear people say, well, if DC and Puerto Rico become states, that's 4 more Senate seats for the Democrats, which is absolutely an incorrect assumption. American Samoa, Puerto Rico have Republican members of Congress. The prior governor of Puerto Rico was in fact a Republican. It's this whole mind frame that because we are brown people, we're going to be monolithic in our ideology and our thinking, which I think has also hampered us from moving into statehood. So, you know, of course, we're very interested in the District of Columbia being a state. I am actually for Puerto Rico statehood. And as the Virgin Islands, in 2 years, we will be at our 175th year from emancipation. The US Virgin Islands and Haiti are the only 2 places in the Western Hemisphere that obtained their freedom from chattel slavery through organized open rebellion from violent overthrow. And so we count that date as very, very sacred to us. It's July 3rd, interestingly. And so there's been a question in our local legislature, myself and the governor, that we need to put that question out to our residents and to the people of the Virgin Islands to determine what they want our status to be moving forward.
All right. We have a couple more people who are interested in what you were saying about your colleagues in Congress engaging in disinformation. Braxton Brooker, are you here? Braxton?
Yeah, I'm here. I was finding the mute
Ask your question, please. And congratulations.
Thank you.
You're all right. Well, tell people what you're doing now and then ask your question.
Well, I am soon to be the lead author of the recast over at Politico. Start a week from Tuesday.
What is the recast?
Now, the recast is a twice-a-week newsletter that focuses on race and identity and politics. Then we're going to be, I mean, it's launched already. So we've been covering a lot of things, including what it means to be, a Black farmer, legislation that's being introduced by Senator Cory Booker, trying to get more money for Black farmers. So it's a chance to really dig into a lot of issues that are important to people of color. And now Tuesday's edition is going to be focusing on the rise in Asian American hate following last week's tragic shooting down in Atlanta. So
okay, now your question for the Congresswoman.
So my question is, because of all this misinformation that's being spread by a number of your Republicans, a number of colleagues on the other side of the aisle, how is this impacting the ability to actually get legislation passed? Because obviously Biden came in saying that he wanted to pass bipartisan legislation, which seems to be at odds here. If you can't agree on what the truth is in journalism, how are you going to be able to pass legislation that is bipartisan?
I think that's a great question. And interestingly, I think it affects passing legislation in two ways, right? One is, of course, passing bipartisan legislation in terms of process, it becomes difficult because it's difficult to get Republican members to agree to what the truth of the legislation is in itself. You hear some members talking about legislation that to me seems very clear in what it is, what it can and can't do. And the fact that they have construed it to be much larger and put intentions on it that individuals may not have thought about, and that it fits a narrative makes it harder in terms of process for that legislation to pass. Maybe not in the House because of our slim margin, but definitely when that legislation goes up to the Senate. Because it's been spinned in some ways, it slows down the process on the Senate side, particularly for it to pass muster with, the 60 or more members that you need for the legislation to get through. It also makes it problematic in terms of creating co-sponsorship and bipartisanship, because right now there's even a philosophical question among members of, do I want to have my name on legislation with someone who's a liar? Who is someone who I believe was trying to kill me 2 months ago because they were spreading lies, or who is a seditionist in my belief, or someone who wants to overthrow our government. So I know in my office, I'm considered a moderate, much more moderate than many of my Democratic colleagues. And I have a list of legislation that I previously co-sponsored with Republicans that I've told my leg team, hold off, because I have to come to grips with the notion that I'm actually going to work with that person who previously I may have had lunch with, who our daughters were pen pals. And now this joker, after the insurrection, still voted to object to the certification. So I can't just bring myself to even work on a piece of legislation with this person. And I'm considered a moderate, so I can't even imagine what is happening in the minds of some of my more progressive left of myself members of Congress. It makes it really difficult.
I can imagine. Who are the worst offenders?
Oh, I don't want to say that. But I can count of, I could do like maybe four hands with a group that, I'm definitely not breaking any bread with, and at least 10 or a dozen that I probably wouldn't even get into an elevator with at this point. That's how stark and how tense it is right now in Washington.
All right, Yvonne Roman, you had a question. Yvonne, are you there? Okay, we'll move on. Okay.
Yeah, Richard. I'm not sure what question you're referring to because I typed several, so.
Okay. Well, your most important question.
I'll pass. Go to the next person. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. We had one from Marita Coley. She wanted to know about whether this distrust and the lies and all that, should there be a higher standard when the misinformation impacts civil rights, voting, housing, etc.?
Say that question again.
Marita Coley asks, should there be a higher standard when the misinformation impacts civil rights, voting, housing, etc.? Or you can just, are those areas being affected by the misinformation?
I mean, I think that so many areas are affected by it, but I'd hate to put a hierarchy as to what's important and what's not important. I think they're all so critically important. I think about education, which for many of us, my parents are from the Virgin Islands and came to New York in the 1950s. They like so many of us have believed that education is the, one of the pathways to wealth and to the attainment of, some level of security in this country, and the assault on education. I mean, we can't get a tremendous education bill through right now. That's problematic in Congress. But I think for the Biden administration, I believe for the Democrats and for my party to retain power and for us to be able to demonstrate for the re-election that we've actually done what we need to do. For people of color, it's two parts, right? That there are two pillars. One is, of course, voting rights, and one is voting security for those individuals who I believe that there is an assault on them being able to vote. And that's not just people of color. Stopping early voting, stopping late night voting, stopping Sunday voting is going to affect working people. It's going to affect people who live in not just urban areas, but in rural areas as well. It will affect farm communities. It will affect so many Americans. And that assault is something that I think has to be corrected, correct? But I think the other thing that has to be is that we've got to create mechanisms for wealth and for job security in this country. We've got to have housing, having a home is the greatest means of economic security for a family. How are we going to allow individuals to have home ownership? How are we going to take down the barriers to education, whether it's increasing Pell Grants and reducing student loan debt, opening avenues for education, for entrepreneurship? I think that the Biden administration has got to address those two areas for them to be a success and for us to be able to continue realizing and fulfilling promises to the people that elected us.
Okay, Hazel Edney asked a question. Are you there, Hazel? Okay, well, in the chat she says.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, ask your question, please.
Well, I was wondering your thoughts, since we're talking to you as a lawmaker, should it be illegal or crime for a member of Congress? And I even thought about, perhaps as a journalist, but for now, for a member of Congress to lie or intentionally mislead the general public on issues of public policy.
Well, I think that no, I think that that's, as a lawyer, finding intent in lies is a difficult task for a jury to be able to come up with. And, I don't want to be thought police for people, but I think that there need to be greater consequences, right? Lawyers, lawmakers, and those of us who are elected are driven by elections. And so I think about, that being important, making them feel consequences of lies in a different kind of way. Retaining
all that kind of stuff. I mean, it seems that there's got to be something to hold members of Congress accountable, and perhaps journalists, some of the journalist organizations should come up, Richard, with ways to hold journalists accountable when they do this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, that depends on whether their bosses encourage that.
Sure. I mean, I do think that there needs to be a freedom when members are on the floor to be able to debate and express opinions that others may find even reprehensible. And that free flow of debate and discussion, I think, is important to us as a democracy. But I do think that there's a responsibility to ensure that the American public also gets the truth and statistics and data to make them be informed about what's true and what's not true. I think social media has completely changed the game for you guys and made it so much more difficult for you all in terms of being journalists. It's not just a television, and it's not just radio and print, but there are so many other mediums for people to receive information. It makes it really hard. I think you guys have a real challenge ahead. And I'm just grateful that you all are having this kind of discussion to challenge yourself about it.
Yeah, Richard, if I can jump in for just a second.
I was about to call to you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So last week, the News Literacy Project, the organization I work for, we issued a statement calling on state legislatures to base any changes that they're making to their election laws on facts, because we've seen this rash of information or a rash of proposed legislation that is supposed to fix some of the election problems, but they're based on the fiction that there were all these problems in the past election. And so I think I think it's very important for the journalist here to sort of share that reasoning with their audience and make sure that they understand these laws are being proposed to fix X, Y, and Z, but are they being proposed to fix something that's not broken? So I think it's really important to share that. And then one other point I've been wanting to make is I think I'm not a journalist. I'm always on the PR side, but I work for newsrooms. We think very rationally. We think that when we write these things down and we inform our audiences, that they'll accept that and that they'll act on that because it's factual, verified information. But I think what we have to remember are people are in filter bubbles, and that there's a belonging for people. So there was a study recently that showed that people, even if they knew something was factually inaccurate, if it's what their filter bubble believed, they would pass it along on their social channels. And so you have to really be aware that part of what you're doing is trying to break that bubble and stop people from trying to bring the rationality back to these actions that people are taking. And it's very tough to crack that because it's an emotional belonging thing. And I think you have to be very aware and careful about how you do that.
Okay, I understand that. All right, one of the questions that I put out there is, journalists do say this is wrong. This is not accurate, and they've been doing this for a while, but I don't see that it's doing that much good. What about that, Mike? I mean, people are saying, we should be bringing this up as false and all that, but as you just pointed out, if you're in this bubble and you want to believe something, what we say is that does not seem to be making too much difference.
Well, the information is going to spread whether you report on it or not. People have their own networks now. So I think there comes a point where local news organizations have to sort of assess, is this a problem in our community and is this something we need to address? And then as we've shared in the chat here, that one way to do that we found that is effective is the truth sandwich, where you state the fact, then you might state that there were allegations that there was manipulation in the last election, and then you state another fact that for instance, government agencies have looked at this and said there was no interference. So you are amplifying that, and I think that's what happened with QAnon. But I think a lot of the QAnon was partly due to COVID. People were indoors and just kind of started spending a little more time online, and the social media companies, their algorithms are set to feed you more and pull people down the rabbit holes so that they spend more time on those social platforms. And so I think that's one of the things that happened. But if you don't rebut the QAnon conspiracy, then it's just going to continue to grow.
Okay. All right. The Congresswoman has to leave. Is there anybody who has a final question before she does? I can't see. Let's see. Can't see everybody.
I've got a final statement for her.
All right. Final statement.
Everybody on this call, all of my friends, if I only have you, Richard, but if I have any others on the call, you need to be beating it on down to one of the prettiest islands you'll ever find. I prefer St. John. And I guess I'm not, full disclosure, the Congresswoman is coming to you live from the beautiful island of St. John. There are three.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Too late now. you're with a group of journalists. Congresswoman. So,
Well, thank you, Fred. And when you guys post-pandemic are thinking about a place to have a location, I'm just going to be really mean and show you guys that this is the view behind me.
Ooh.
There it is.
So,
Nice.
I
There
think
it
you
is.
should be thinking about something like
And
this
it's real.
on a journalist retreat.
There you go.
Oh, yes.
I actually, I see Drew, Duchess Drew, yes, has a mother who's a Crucian. I'm a Crucian, I'm from St. Croix, but we have an island for anybody and everyone who's interested. St. Thomas, St. John, Water Island, or St. Croix. Come on down.
Here,
Couldn't
here.
say
All
it
right.
better. Thank you, Congresswoman. I'll see you in January. Come on.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks so much
Congresswoman.
for the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for the time.
Thank you
Thank
for
you so
appearing.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for appearing on my
Thank you.
podcast.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
guys take care. All right.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you so much. All right, anybody have questions for the rest of the panel? Monica Richardson and Mike Webb. And who else did we have? Maybe that was it. If we don't have questions, we can go to our discussion.
Richard?
Yes. Oh,
Hi,
yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about earlier, people. I was sidetracked. Basically, people have been talking about the truth sandwich and how.
What is the truth sandwich?
Yeah, somebody explain it.
It's
I
where
think
you.
Al's going to explain it.
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
All right. So it's rooted in the idea that very often when we are trying to correct something that had been said, we repeat what was said. So if, for example, you said Al Tompkins in your original reporting, Al Tompkins stole that phone, and then tomorrow you decided, well, that's not exactly right. So you would say reports that Al Tompkins stole that phone are now inaccurate. What you've done is repeated Al Tompkins and stole that phone. And so the whole idea of a truth sandwich is to say the inaccurate reports yesterday of Al Tompkins stealing a phone were even more, denied even more today, or, something. So the whole idea is that you don't repeat the lie and benefit the liar. The whole idea of the liar's dividend is what's at play here. And so very often, for example, that vaccine doesn't work would be repeated over and over. And so somebody else would deny today that vaccine doesn't work. That just benefits the liar. The truth sandwich is surrounding the lie with the truth.
But if we report, if part of our reporting is to figure out the lie, then take it apart, and then explain it to the reader that is a lie.
That's right.
Aren't we just giving oxygen again to the lie? I mean,
well, the alternative in today's society is that if you do an online search for whether or not that's true and you don't correct it, then there is no record that it was in fact not true. Where we get into the most trouble is when we write headlines that we know are going to be search engine friendly, because we're going to use the lie in the headline, and that magnifies the lie because the engines will place it higher. That's what people are searching for.
So basically, a journalist's job today is also part of the reporting process that we used to do, which basically would be, to see through lies and not even report it, is to actually add that to the mix, to the explanation that you give the reader.
Well, the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics says, as part of it, is to minimize harm. So seek truth and tell it, and where possible, minimize the harm. That's what this would do. Our first obligation is to report the truth, seek the truth, and report it. But if we can also minimize the harm of the lie, then we should be doing that as well.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll go right to the introduction, so we'll know who we've been talking with and who's been sharing this experience. On my screen, Pearl Stewart is first. Didn't mean to surprise you. Pup, unmute. I'm here. Okay.
Okay, Pearl Stewart,
Longtime journalist on the West Coast, Oakland Tribune, San Francisco Chronicle, and a journalism educator. And now I freelance.
Okay, thank you. Shirley Carswell.
Hi, Shirley Carswell. I'm the executive director of the Dow Jones News Fund.
We can't see you.
I know. And I am also a former Washington Post assistant managing editor, deputy managing editor, and I taught at Howard University for the last 7 years or so.
Okay, Fred Sweets.
I'm Fred Sweets, and I love you all. I work at the St. Louis American newspaper, and can't wait to get to the Virgin Islands after that video. That is all.
All right, Erica Hunsinger.
Hi, everybody. Erica Hunsinger. I'm the new senior politics editor at the Denver Post, ex-AP, ex-Public Radio, ex-Delaware Paper, and Raleigh News and Observer. New member of Ida B. Wells Society, also Society of Environmental Journalists, and hoping to teach again at the University of Kansas like I did last semester.
Very good. Thank you. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Chuck Stevens. Chuck?
Yeah, I'm Chuck Stevens, freelancer, formerly of Bloomberg News and the Wall Street Journal. And I'm on the advisory board of the Newhouse School at Syracuse University and co-chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Very good, very good. All right, thanks, Chuck. Sheila Solomon.
Hi, everyone. I am in Chicago. I am the president now of the Journalism Funding Partners. I'm also still the Strategic Alliance Liaison for Rivet. And I have been a supporter of the News Literacy Project for more than 13 years.
All right. Okay, Bracton, we've gotten to you already. Karen Dunlap.
I'm a former president of the Poynter Institute, where I heard many excellent presentations by Al Tompkins. I'm in Tampa, and I spend time in Nashville working on construction and community building.
All right, very good. Gloria Minot. Unmute, please.
There you go. Formerly of WPFW Radio and WHUR.
Okay. Yvonne Roman.
Hi, freelance journalist out of Washington, D.C., former executive director of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, and involved in Unity and many other organizations that sought diversity in media.
Okay. Miranda Spivak. Miranda. Uh-oh. We'll have to come back. I think you're muted. Ask to unmute. Okay. Are you there?
You may have stepped away.
Oh, okay. All right, Hazel Edney.
Hazel Trice Edney, editor-in-chief of the Trice Edney Newswire, president and CEO of Trice Edney Communications. I'm gonna have to jump off, so I just wanted to encourage all of my my fellow journalism educators. I am an adjunct educator at the Howard University School of Communications, Kathy Hughes School of Communications. Just want to encourage us all to double down on integrity for our students. A lot of times that is that's something that's we need to get back on that and push it.
Very good, very good. Mary Curtis.
Yes, sorry. Roll call columnist on politics, culture, and race, host of the CQ Roll Call podcast, Equal Time, with Mary C. Curtis, and senior leader at the Op-Ed Project.
Thank you, very good. Okay, Rebecca Aguilar.
Hi, Richard. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Aguilar, 28 years in television news, now a freelance reporter. Proud to say the first Latina and woman of color to be elected as president-elect of the Society of Professional Journalists in 111 years. So hurrah for women and women of color. And thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Oh, thanks for coming. Okay, Carolyn Lumsden.
Hi, I'm the Vance Chair in Communication at Central Connecticut State University and former opinion editor at the Hartford Courant. And Richard, I love these roundtables. They're wonderful. Thank you.
All right, very good. Gene Meyer.
I am Gene Meyer. I'm a former Washington Post reporter and editor, author of Fight for Freedom, the African American Soldiers in John Brown's Army. I'm on the board of the Washington Independent Review of Books, and still writing articles and book proposals, and it's just another excellent roundtable. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, thank you. Claudette James. Unmute.
Sorry. Hi, good afternoon. Truth in Education Journalism consultant, former reporter, several newspapers, and retired assistant superintendent of the Ithaca City School District. Goal is to support journalists and educators with sharing truth with the public. Richard, this has been an amazing presentation today. And my head is, I just keep saying, how can journalists normalize reporting misinformation so the voters will hold elected officials accountable for the lies and misinformation? Because the reality is currently some of the elected officials benefit greatly from their lies. And at times the lies are normalized, may not receive as much credibility as the lies itself. So maybe an annual, widely circulated publication of lies, mistruths by elected officials that can be used in classrooms and circulated with the public. 2021, 2020, 2022, that this becomes normalized. Maybe that's something we could just look a little bit closer.
Okay, you might share with those students the various fact-checking columns that already exist,
right?
And that will be something they can do in the meantime. All right, Chevry Lassiter.
Good afternoon. I'm Chevry Lassiter. I'm the producer for WIN TV for the Washington Informer, and I'm also the photo editor for the Washington Informer.
Okay, thank you.
And I work with Richard.
Yes, to help set this up, as a matter of fact. Kathleen Cahill.
Okay, just unmuted. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathleen Cahill. Hi, Richard. Longtime Washington Post editor. I was then a news producer at WYPR in Baltimore, one of the NPR stations in Baltimore, and I recently began freelancing as a writer-editor. So thanks, Richard, for another great roundtable. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Fergus Shield.
Good day, Richard, and thanks for another great day. I am the managing editor of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists based in Washington, DC. I've spent a lot of my career in Australia, where the retreat of large newsrooms, the concentration of the media, and the dominance of social media is causing huge problems with truth in journalism. And so today's talk is absolutely riveting. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Jackie Jones. Unmute.
Dean for Programs and Chair of the Multimedia Journalism Department at Morgan State University School of Global Journalism and Communication. And this is just rich stuff. I've been taking all kinds of notes for students. And Al Tompkins, I'm going to call you because I want that presentation in front of all my students so they'll do more reporting and less repeating.
All right. Well, we're going to have, thanks to Chevry, there'll be a video of this made, and then students and others can watch that. Okay, next we have, Mike Webb, we've spoken, like I've done these people. Christopher Brooks.
Christopher Brooks, hello everybody. I am a reporter at CBS Money Watch, which is the business and financial reporting arm of CBS News. I am a Detroit, Michigan native who also adjunct teaches at Hunter College in the city. and at SUNY Purchase, which is about 20-30 minutes north of the city. I am in New York right now, upstate and downstate. I'm physically in Rochester right now, but
all right.
Rochester, New York. This was my first roundtable. This was fantastic. I have always thought about executing the truth sandwich, but never knew that that was the label for it. And that's something that I totally believe in, and I'm going to do more often now that there's an actual, name to it that I can point to for my editor. So thanks for having me.
All right, we're glad you came. Sharon Farmer.
Yo, Southeast. And
Southeast.
I'm also a native Tonian, and I worked in the Clinton White House where I got to see more truth than we see right the last administration. So I look forward to everybody calling people out because they keep doing things that mess us up in DC. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, Roger Witherspoon. Unmute, please.
You could spend your life waiting for people to unmute.
Right. Roger, we can't hear you. Okay, we'll come back to you. John Yearwood.
Hey, Richard, another home run with your roundtable. I hadn't realized I'd also get travel advice from your program. So it looks like my first post-COVID trip might be the USVI, even though I'm in Miami right now. But I'm transitioning out of my role currently as the Deputy Trade and Ag Editor at Politico. And when we get together again, I guess next month, we'll talk about what my new role will be. But as always, Richard, another great Sunday. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, Roger is ready now, he says. Roger Witherspoon. Well, not completely ready. All right. Deborah Berry.
Hi, I'm Deborah Berry. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I am on USA Today's National Enterprise team.
Okay, very good. Angela Dodson.
Hi, I'm in Trenton, New Jersey. I'm a veteran journalist, former senior editor of the New York Times, former executive editor of Black Issues Book Review. I've spent the last dozen years mostly editing books, ghostwriting, etc. I run something called Editors on Call, which I try to find people to do editing and writing and photographing or whatever for other people. My husband, Michael Days, has now joined me in that enterprise. I'm also the author of Remember the Ladies, a book on women's suffrage. I spend a lot of time promoting that still. It's been out 4 years. And I do some voice acting, that's it.
Is this a big month for you, Women's History Month?
It's a very big month. A year ago this week, about half of my schedule was suddenly canceled. I was in Oberlin, Ohio with 3 other speakers, and we were told that the entire staff had been called to a meeting to decide whether they were going to close. On my way home, half my schedule was being canceled by message and email and whatever. Over the last year, a lot of that stuff has been rescheduled virtually, and particularly this month, I probably have about 7 or 8 appearances. Some I've already done, 2 more to go.
Okay. Joel Dreyfus.
Hi, I'm joining you from Paris, but being a Caribbean native of Haiti, the view of the Virgin Islands was very tempting. I hope we should have an NABJ convention down there at some point.
Okay.
I've been at newspapers, magazines, internet, television, and currently living here and working on a book.
Here, here. You know, the National Association of Black-owned Broadcasters always goes to places like that for their convention. So there must be a reason. Must be something to it.
Junket.
Yeah, really. Kenneth Walker and that fabulous background.
Thank you, Richard. Well, I'm retired now. I'm writing a memoir based on experiences as a journalist at newspapers, radio, television, internet. Principally, I guess, at the Washington Star newspaper. ABC News, and is the avid bureau chief of National Public Radio. I'm now retired and writing my memoir about all those experiences.
Okay, great. Michael Hill.
Thank you for another great program, Richard. Michael Hill, retired TV editor at the Washington Post. Thanks for a great afternoon.
Great, thank you. Cheryl W. Thompson.
Hi, thank you, Richard. My apologies if you called on me earlier, but I had to watch the last 5 minutes of my beloved Illinois get beaten by Loyola, but that's another story for another day. I am Cheryl W. Thompson. I'm an investigative correspondent for NPR, but recently named senior editor for Station Investigations, a new initiative that NPR started in trying to get more local investigations around the country. I came to NPR in 2019 after 22 years at the Washington Post, and I am the first Black president of Investigative Reporters and Editors, and I am currently serving my third and final term as president.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, Richard, for this. This was a great way to spend a Sunday afternoon. I mean, I had to choose between March Madness and Richard, and I chose Richard.
Okay, well, thanks for coming. Benita Bing.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Benita Bing. I am the president of the Exposure Group, African American Photographers Association, located here in Washington, D.C. I'm also studio owner of Talbert and Bing Studios, located here in the Brooklyn section of Northeast D.C., and the producer of Richard's Journal-isms Roundtable.
Yes, she is. That's right. Thank you, Benita. Adam Powell.
Everyone, Adam Powell with the University of Southern California. We go back into the field this week. Last year, we did election cybersecurity workshops for each of the 50 states. We start for 2021 on Thursday with a workshop from Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Anybody who wants to join, just give me an email. I'll send you an invitation. It's free, nonpartisan. Our speakers will include Freeman Orbowski, president of UMBC, which was our first university partner when we began 14 months ago in person in Maryland, along with Morgan State, and Gary Pruitt, the president of the Associated Press. And we're going to break some news. The Digital Inclusion Initiative is now up to 10 USC schools and national partners across the US.
Very good. Okay, thanks, Adam. Miranda Spivak.
Hi, everybody. I'm Miranda Spivak, formerly of the Washington Post, most recently having done some work for Reveal and USA Today. And this year I have an Alicia Patterson Fellowship to do some stories about policing and accountability.
All right, very good. Peter Bailey, are you there? Peter? Okay, we'll come back then. Betty Ann Williams.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you, so many of you. I'm Betty Ann Williams. I am a freelance editor based in Washington.
Okay, I think that's it. Did we get everybody? Leave anybody out? Okay. Okay, now we can have a discussion if we choose about anything people want to talk about. Oh, well, and particularly what we just heard.
Richard, how about promoting what you're working on for next month?
I'm not ready to talk about that yet.
All right, fair enough.
But it's going to be fun, I hope.
Richard, can you hear me?
Yes, that's the point.
Yes.
This is A. Peter Bailey.
Oh, there you are. Okay. All right.
Can you hear me?
Please introduce
oh,
yourself.
okay. Oh, okay. A. Peter Bailey. I live in D.C. now. I'm a former editor of Blacklash, the newsletter of Brother Malcolm's organization, the OAAU. I am a former associate editor of Ebony Magazine. I taught journalism students at 3 universities. Former president of the New York Association of Black Journalists. A column for the Tri-State Wire Service, and just finishing up a book on Brother Malcolm's international program, Pan-Africanism, and why it so enraged the United States government.
Okay, very good.
About 99% finished.
Very good. Okay, good. Roger Witherspoon, are you ready yet?
I think Roger said he was having issues with this mic.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me see if there's anyone else we didn't get to. I think we've gotten anybody. All right. Well, what did people think about this presentation, and where do we take this in our 9 to 5s?
Richard.
Yes.
I'd like to ask if Mike would explain to the group a little bit about what News Literacy Project offers to students and parents, for that matter, but especially students. Mike, could you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sheila. So the News Literacy Project was founded 13 years ago by Alan Miller. He's a former investigative reporter for the LA Times, and he saw the need for the next generation of young people just to understand the news in general. They couldn't tell the difference between news and opinion. They don't know how these social media platforms work. So our work is based on basically helping them understand fact from fiction, to help them understand the traits of quality journalism, and to help them understand the First Amendment, and basically just kind of put them on the path to making facts more central to their lives. And in the past year, we've pivoted just a little bit to opening up to the general public. So we make resources available to educators, but we also now work with, we provide tools for the general public so that they can become media literate themselves. And it's really just about understanding the process that you as journalists go through, and all the vetting and verification, and just really trying to help them gain a deeper appreciation for the news.
All right. I'd like to ask Monica Richardson about Florida. Every time I turn on the news about COVID or something, it's about Florida.
Yeah,
Is this information?
you know, I've been here physically for about 3 weeks, and so and tomorrow I actually hit that magic number of 50, where I'll actually be able to get my vaccine. Let's just say I've already hit the magic number of 50, and I will be able to get my vaccine tomorrow because they're lowering the age here in Florida to 50. So yeah, lots of information, and we are. I mentioned earlier something we are doing to try to get information out to combat disinformation in that space, but it's definitely a lot of it. That's for sure.
Okay. Anybody else got questions for Monica? Carolyn. Unmute, please.
Okay, I actually have a question for Al Tompkins. Is that okay? So Al, so is AstraZeneca getting a sort of bum rap in Europe? Curious what you think about that.
Yeah, they are a little bit. So the issue is AstraZeneca at all related to the blood clot issue? And the answer is we just don't know. So there's two ways to look at this. One is that there's a lot of suspicion around whether or not they are related, but the other is they can't say for sure they're not. So a dozen countries now have basically, European countries, put AstraZeneca on the hold until about the middle of next week. It looks like it's loosening up some. But the real question is going to be how much traction have they lost? Whatever doubts there already were around AstraZeneca, now there will be even more. There have been very, very few of these reports of blood clots, but enough that they couldn't let it go on without it being answered. It's difficult to prove the negative, though, right? It's difficult to prove once there have been blood clots that you haven't been responsible for them until you get a longitudinal study, and that's very difficult to do while the machine is running. These are the kinds of things that traditionally we would have known in 6 or 8 or 10 years of drug trials. But somebody said it's like trying to fix the airplane while you're flying. This is a very difficult thing to do. I think we have lost a lot of traction. One of the more curious stories, Carolyn, is going to be, though, is that the United States, as you know, has not approved AstraZeneca, but on Friday reported that we are going to ship off millions of doses of it to Canada and to Mexico, which is a real curiosity when you think about it. Our government's going to ship off vaccines that we ourselves have not approved, but they asked for it. Mexico wanted it, so we're shipping it off to them. But I think it's one of the real ethical conundrums that we find ourselves in.
Richard.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? I think Al came closest to answer to my question in terms of the work he and others are doing about how journalists combat disinformation and misinformation. But the bottom line that I'm getting from Alan and other people is that in the final analysis, there ain't much we can do about it. Is there nothing, or are there no systems or technology that can be set up with either by individual journalists or in news organizations themselves that can serve to help identify these technologically advanced falsehoods? And what can be done about it?
Kenneth, part of the issue is that we have to make it safe for people to change their minds. And that was one of the questions I was interested in whether the Congresswoman would speak to. I think that we as journalists have to recognize that when people, particularly people in power and authority, change their minds, it's not necessarily a sign of weakness, but instead it's a sign of intellectual maturity. And we journalists traditionally have punished you if you've changed your mind, if you flip-flop, as we would call it. So at some point, we have to recognize that new information becomes available and enlightened people change their mind in the face of that new information. We have to make it safe. But Kenneth, you and I have both known people in our lives. We all have some crazy Uncle Frank who believes what he always believes, and he's never going to change his mind. And I would say that the reason that that is the case is because they're afraid to change their mind. They're afraid it's going to make them look weak, and they're not certain. So I think this is one of those 2021 kind of issues. Are we going to make it safe for each other to change our minds about a range of things, whether it has to do with same-sex marriage or women's rights or international relationships or you name it?
They're crazy uncles, Al, but they're also vicious cousins.
Yes, there are.
Spreading lies for political purposes. And I'm not sure that we either have now or are developing methods or practices or technologies to combat that.
People have to be open to a different way of truth, of thinking about the truth. And it doesn't matter. I always say when I'm teaching a disinformation class, one of the first questions I usually ask is, how open are you to thinking about this in a different way? Because if the answer is no, let's don't waste our time. But if you are, if there is a level of evidence I could give you to help you change your mind, tell me what that level is, and let's see if we can get there. And I think that's part of it, is that we have to make it safe for people to think differently than they think now. If you're not ready to learn, there's no amount of teaching that's going to help you.
I actually have a question for Al, but I'm certainly open to have anyone answer this, because we're all learning this kind of on the fly. And as much as we can work on our truth sandwiches and put the fixings all in there and make it a delicious truth sandwich, if you will, part of the issue is that people don't trust us as journalists. So how do you work on building the trust with the people you are trying to reach in order to make sure that they actually believe what we are trying to tell them?
There's an old saying where I grew up in Kentucky that you make your reputation over time and you lose it overnight. And I would say it's not even overnight now. It's in a nanosecond. So we've given people plenty of reasons to distrust us. Sometimes it's through inaccuracy. Sometimes it's through self-serving, but sometimes we don't establish any credibility in the area that we're teaching or that we're reporting on. And so we can't give people the gun to shoot us with, and we so often do. We can't make stupid mistakes on stories and expect for people to trust us. So the way that I would say the single most important thing I can do is show my work. You remember your fourth grade teacher saying to do this, Mike. You can remember that your fourth grade teacher said, show your math work so I can see how you got to that answer. And I think we have to do that in journalism. That investigative reporters, Cheryl will tell you, investigative reporters and IRE is always preaching, show your work, show us how you know that, show us how you came to that. And I think that's huge in establishing credibility with the public. Will they ever read those footnotes? Probably not. But knowing you could, I think, instills some security.
I would add there are some other services out there. There's a organization called Trusting News, and they offer tips every week on things your newsroom can do to build greater trust with your audience. There's a technology service called NewsGuard that tries to rank the quality of different newsrooms online so that when people are on Facebook, they can kind of go over and see. And then obviously Poynter has tons of sources. So there are some things.
Can I
Don't
add
give up
something?
hope.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Braxton, one of the things is, it's one thing show your work, it's another thing show up. You know, for example, in the Latino community, let's say, I mean, you're not Latino, but, you know, go into the Latino community, get to know people before you need them. You know, before I needed to do a story about Asian Americans or Asian violence, I got to know people in the Korean community here or the Chinese community, whether they were fellow journalists who can take me in there because I don't speak Korean. I mean, I speak Spanish, but if I need someone to open the door, it's working with, you know, Asian American and Asian and journalists who can help me go in there. Also, you know, in the Asian communities here in the Dallas area, by the way, I go in there, I go shopping, I go walking around. I want them to see me, that I've shown up. So the day that I need to go there for a story, then they're familiar with me, especially the journalists, because in Dallas, you have so many Chinese newspapers, Korean newspapers. I mean, they stack them up outside the grocery stores. And so that's important because unfortunately, those people can't see our stories. Sometimes they may not be watching our channels or listening to us on the radio or reading the Dallas Morning News. So while we can show them our stories, some of them may not even be looking at our stuff. So we build that trust by showing up, by being there, by, you know, I always tell people when they come to Dallas, go walk up and down Quinceañera Row. It's where all the stores have all their quinceañera dresses in the windows. But guess what? That's where you're going to find the Hondurans, the Mexicans, the, you know, Guatemalans. You're going to find them all there. I say explore. You know, I'm a reporter who constantly is out in the field, constantly, whether there's a pandemic or not. It's important to get out of the office and go in there and just discover. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Richard, can I add something to that also to just amplify what Rebecca was saying?
Yes.
Is I think that we are making assumptions that people are reading our stuff, and I don't think they are. And I think that a lot of this information is being passed through Facebook and Google. And I think, you know, more pressure needs to be put on them. I mean, Facebook's verification process to me is not really a process at all. And it's still reliant on machine learning, not on human eyes. And you know, I just think that's a huge problem, is that so much of it's being filtered through not, you know, the first news source, which is the Dallas Morning News or the New York Times or whatever. It's way past that. So what do we do about that?
Well, and can I add something else, Miranda, to this? Is that, you know what, and again, I bet you, and you know, I have a lot of friends who are journalists in Dallas, okay? But I bet you for many, including Latino reporters, okay, they haven't been in parts of Carrollton, which is a suburb of Dallas, is predominantly Asian, or Richardson, which I live close by, which is predominantly many Chinese people. They haven't been there until, you know, a bank robbery happened, maybe a murder. But I always tell people, you know, I love Mexican food, but when I need to go somewhere to eat and explore, I go to another area. Korean food, you know, whether Ethiopian food, so they can see my face. And I always say, hey, you know, I'm a reporter. If you ever need me, here's my card. But again, it's about opening doors. Not everything is on social media. Nothing drives me nuts. But when I see a reporter and go, hi, does anyone know a, you know, an Asian who worked at a spa, you know, can you help me out? And it's on Twitter. And I usually tell those people, hey, thanks for the story idea. I mean, a real reporter doesn't put it out there. A real reporter gets their ass out there and finds the story. That's it.
Rebecca, it's great hearing you talk about Dallas. I mean, one of the most fun and consequential roles I think that or jobs that I've had in journalism was in Dallas when I created a beat of international communities and to track the various international communities that were beginning to take shape in Dallas. But again, this was 25 years ago, so there's a long time, and some of those people actually still remain my friends. But I wanted to ask Al about all these tools that are coming on, and the thing that sort of troubles me, I guess, is that now everyone is a journalist, and whether it's the major mainstream media often quoting the up and coming newspaper media organizations, and some of these journalism groups that are just coming, not groups, but media companies that are just coming online. Many of them have not gone through the training that many of us have through years of journalism and ethics and other areas to know that you don't use these tools. So you probably may see, and it's probably one of the things that you're probably tracking. And I'm just wondering whether you're seeing many of these tools being used by mainstream media, or whether many of them are being used by these, I don't know whether you want to call them citizen journalists, or these new journalists that are coming online without a lot of the experience and the training that many of us have.
Well, we come to a place, John, where we as journalists like to sit back and say, look how holy we are, and look how ethical we are, look how trained we are. You simply are not up to it. And the fact is, the public is going, no, see, the thing is, you don't get me. While you're sitting up on your high horse and telling me all how ethical you are, the fact is you're not. And so I really don't care. So that's part of it. One of the things that we have to do as journalists is to say, look, these are our ethics standards. These are the ones we live by. And the difference between journalism and other purveyors of information is that we do, in fact, adhere to a set of ethics. I mean, Karen could tell you how many times people have asked us at Poynter, do you journalists have any ethics? And we go, well, actually, we do. Here's a course that we teach. And so the truth of the matter is that we have to intentionally separate ourselves from those who don't adhere to ethics. The problem comes when there is no clear line between those of us who claim to be ethical journalists and those who don't. Or it could even be the same organization has two different kinds of programs, one that is and one that isn't. And that becomes even more difficult. What I would say to you, though, is that while it is more difficult for us sometimes to discern truth from propaganda or truth from misinformation, these tools that I've shown you also are phenomenally useful. And so the very tools that can cause us problems also can be incredibly useful to us. So, for example, I can use search tools now now that I understand how photos can be altered, I can be looking for those things and detect alterations that I never would have been able to before. So that's important for us to understand, that every tool that we can use unethically might also have ethical applications, and use the tools for good. Look, I don't fear technology. What I want to do is be aware of technology so that I can know when it's being used well and when it's being used badly.
Richard.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Peter.
Yes.
I don't know where this fits into what we are saying right now, but I think one of the things that we as journalists can do, especially for me with the Black community, we got to stop making our communities, our people, look upon themselves as hopeless. I think that we practically never talk about the strengths of various communities, the strengths of the Asian American community, the strengths of that each one of these communities, group of people in this country, have strengths: economic, political, cultural, education, technology. But everything we write about them is portraying them as victims. And I really and truly believe that we need to stop doing that. We need to start making the people in those communities aware that if you work together and think more collectively using your various types of resources, especially economic resources, you can be much more effective than constantly, walking picket signs and shouting, justice for all, and and all those kind of little chants that we like to make. There are things you can do when something goes wrong, other than just, if you more effectively use your collective economic resources, or if you more collectively use your cultural resources, if you more effectively use technology. We need to stop making these, what I consider these, I've reached a position now, Richard, where I say, when people say something happened in the Black community, my position is what I say now is, this is what happens to a group of people who resolutely refuse to organize a national movement to promote and protect their interests. And I get a lot of criticism for that, but that's my position now.
But isn't that a generalization though, Peter? I mean, there are people doing things out here.
No, I do hardly ever, practically everything you see about our communities in the press is some kind of problem.
Mm-hmm.
We make our people see themselves almost solely as a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do nearly enough reporting and opinion writing and reporting about things that are happening in those communities that are concrete, positive, and productive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
Because, you know, I agree with Peter to a point, but remember the people at the top usually, let's just say it, I mean, they're mostly white people. And so sometimes it's a very narrow lens. Now, of course, it's changing, you know, at the Miami Herald where they've had people of color at the top. But, you know, while, I mean, I don't want to talk about the doom and gloom of the Latino community or the African-American community. But, you know, sometimes the bosses, when you pitch them a story that's like, huh, no blood and guts, sorry, move on. You know, that's how it is in TV news. So sometimes it's out of our control, Peter. All we can do is push forward and hope someone will listen to us, especially when they are white managers who often, because, you know, I'm going to be in this business 40 years, see it through a narrow lens. And when they're challenged, it's like, oh my gosh, the rebellious person, you're suddenly the troublemaker, the outspoken person. Different from a white journalist who says, hey, what about this story? And there's pushback. So we still continue dealing with that. So even though I would love to do, which I do, because I now write for different newspapers where the managers are all color, people of color, the publishers are people of color. What we have to do is continue being that voice, whether those managers see you as the troublemaker or the feisty Latina, you know, you have to push back. But, you know, I think you are generalizing, but sometimes it's out of our control because, again, if you look at the majority of management in TV news, newspaper, digital, radio, who are they? Majority are white.
And what Rebecca is saying is absolutely true. You know, unless it's the Black press, and obviously I'm a little bit prejudiced here, but you know, you really don't have that freedom that you absolutely need in order to speak those things that Peter is saying. He doesn't need any help from me, but I would like to say that yes, it is just, to put it back in context of this conversation, it is just as great of a sin to not teach those things about Black communities and teach those things to Black communities, how strong they are, what direction we need to go, dealing with the mindset, because, you know, that has been where America has attacked Black people the most. But it's just as evil to not do that as it is to put out misinformation. It is, you know, we're missing it. We're not teaching enough. And we're missing putting out the truth about the Black community, the Asian community, the Latino community, et cetera. And so if we would do more of that, then maybe the misinformation would not get so much attention.
Okay, sorry.
I'd like to remind y'all, there's a book that came out a couple of years ago by Robin DiAngelo called White Fragility. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. All these crazy editors and managers and people have, y'all gotta figure a way to talk to them. I don't gotta talk to them because I'm like a freelancer and work for the nice people, okay? But you guys who are making your 9 to 5 and doing good stuff, you need another language for these people who don't get it.
Okay.
I don't know what it
is. Not
I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's not enough. Whether it was when I started in 1969 or what some of these young people are starting today, you have white managers and white colleagues who cannot get it, who will not get it. And so, sure, you could try to figure out the best way to talk to them and do
That's
that.
not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is their strategy. This book is about one person that may give you some ideas how to talk to your white manager, your white boss, because they are fragile. White folk do not want to hear they're not delivering. Do you understand? They're not delivering the news. We're the insiders.
This lady.
And the lady who wrote this is a white person telling white people why they all messed up. It wouldn't hurt to read that book, any of us.
You know, Sharon makes a very good point. One of the things I learned early, and believe me, I've been fired and I've been laid off in this business. And, you know, I remember when I was fired from the Fox station in Dallas, there was the white people that were going to exploit it, white journalists who were going to exploit it. Oh, you know, she was the troublemaker. And then here's the interesting part. The white journalist who came to my side that immediately said she was doing her job. I mean, come on. And you can look it up, the good, bad, and uglies out there about me, which doesn't matter to me. But here's the thing. You know, what's really interesting is there is even white reporters who have come to me and said, Rebecca, you know, I pitched this story just the other day. Someone messaged me and said, Rebecca, I know there's not a big Asian American community in my little town in Nebraska. And this is a white person, by the way. But I pitched the story that, you know, because there is a small community of Asian Americans or Asians in this Nebraska town. So this person was pitching the story and the news director said, no, it has nothing to do, you know, nobody cares in this little town in Nebraska. And this journalist, white journalist, was so upset. And you see, there is, you know, I don't know if it's the new generation, because I know that there are white journalists in my generation that, you know, care about diversity, care about these voices. Unfortunately, in these positions, there are just a few white managers, which I always called my crusaders behind closed doors, who would say, hey, you know what, let's send Rebecca. She'd be good for this. The person that was willing among all those other white people to speak up. So, you know, yeah, the majority, I think, of white managers need, you know, diversity and inclusion 101 and no lip service, please. But, you know, fortunately, there are white journalists out there and even some managers who are trying to make a difference. Their voices are still small and they also jeopardize their voices because remember, they're going up against the good old boys club. But you know, I do give them kudos for at least trying. And I did want to put that out there because, you know, I wouldn't have survived already this long if there weren't those non-people of color in journalism who said she's got a voice, she matters, and so do all the stories she brings to the table. So I thought that was.
Richard, can I say something?
I agree that, but I agree with what everyone is saying, you know, that you have to deal with the fact you're dealing with white, you know, editors and chiefs and that kind of thing. But I think, unfortunately, what we did as a people, especially African Americans, we played a role in that, and we have to admit that we played a role because we took that position. Kind of, if you make our community sound as horrible as possible, maybe that'll get more attention, and that'll get the federal government to put in money, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we went along with that. I mean, we would tell these, sometimes we would, you know, I heard a black police chief once, a black policeman spoke, and I went to a thing when I was working actively as a journalist. He made some statement about 80% of young black males are going to be in jail by the time they are 20 years old or something like that. And I said to myself, 80%, does he realize what he's saying? Now 20% would be bad enough. But see, he's doing that because he thinks by doing it like that. And I think we fell into that trap. So often we painted our communities as in these terrible ways because they thought that would get more attention and more support and more government support and more support from other sources, all that kind of thing. And I think we need to stop that, because I think that even in 2021 we're still doing that too much of a great extent, trying to hopefully we'll get attention from the government or attention from this source. That if we make our communities sound as problem-ridden, as terrible as possible.
Well, let me just pose this to I know Yvonne will get right back to you. So maybe Mike Webb and Hazel and Monica, and that is I think we're forgetting the role of the news consumer in all of this. People complain, and this is very similar to the whole argument about good news. There's not enough good news. All you want is blood and guts. If it bleeds, it leads, and all that other stuff. But the reason why those things, why people gravitate to, if it leads, is because that's what people want to watch. If they would speak up, and some people have spoken up about the need for more good news and feel good. That's why you have the evening news programs now have a feel good ending to their shows, because that they know that people want that. Part of this, I believe, is the news consumers seeking out the kind of information that they want to read. And the Black press is very good at that, because they have a lot of empowering stories about people who have succeeded and are doing good things. So it's up to the news consumer. Maybe Mike can talk about that, to find out where the sources of information are that they want to patronize. And then when somebody does a good job, to send a letter in or tweet, or just make it known to these folks that this is what we want. I was on
Rich.
Yes.
Hey, I just want to comment, because it's burning me. I've been in Miami now for 3 weeks and have started to meet people in the community, and various communities. It's very diverse here, right? But the thing I keep hearing is we want more good news. Don't just cover the bad news. It's not just to me about, I'm not going to go to my newsroom and say, give us more good news. People want to see themselves. They want to see their experiences in everything. So if we write a story about the environment, if we write a story about climate, if we write a story about taxes, whatever it is, Black people have experience with climate. Black people have experience with taxes. People want to see themselves in our coverage. That, to me, is what is more important, is making sure that we, I'm not excusing, ignoring the fact that, yes, we need to have news that empowers people and that talks about the good in their communities and in their lives. But just as important is making sure that we put everyone into every experience that we write about. So if it's an investigative story, we don't go to the same sources and the same people. It goes back to what Rebecca was talking about in terms of not just covering communities, but connecting with them. And that comes through listening sessions, that comes through, taking a seat back and shut up for a minute and listen, right? And not just tell. It comes through changing the face of our advisory boards within the room. For me, it comes through things like hiring and the people who I have in my newsroom to be able to know the experience that they are talking about and writing about, and not be afraid to tell stories that may not always be good, but that are an honest reflection of what my experience might be in my community. And so it's more than just writing about good and sharing good news stories. It is about putting faces and experiences in our content that reflects the real life of a community. And so, there's so much to me entangled in this. And I mean, and for me, like I said, it goes back to hiring. It goes back to a lot of different things that impact the outcome of our content and the audiences that we're trying to reach. It is not I carry this, I consider it an honor, not a burden of what I look like and who I am and the role that I have. But what that means is I have an opportunity to be at the table and say, we just, for instance, started a new newsletter in Miami. It's called the 44%. And it is meant to share some of the experiences that we're talking about in our Black communities, for instance. And when my newsroom first described what that newsletter was like, it said that it would be a newsletter that would be the place that Black Miamians could get their news. Very nuanced language, right? Like, this isn't the one source for where Black Miamians can get their news. This is a reflection and coverage of our communities. But it takes someone that looks like me, who's had that experience, to read those words in a way that another editor might not see them, and then to call it out. So we have to have people in the room that look like us to be able to handle this. And it's not just, someone saying in the room, it's in the chat, you're right, it's not just Black stories. But to me, it's about the experience of our communities and having people and faces, Black and brown, and even neglected. I mean, and we talk about DEI, it's equity, it's inclusion, of a lot of people who feel neglected from our coverage. That goes back to what we were talking about not just covering, but connecting with the people that we're writing about.
Here, here. Okay. I see that is Hal Logan still there? There you are, Hal. You didn't get a chance to introduce yourself, so please tell us about the fact that we used to work together at the Washington Post years ago.
Hey everybody,
what you're up to?
I am Hal Logan. I'm a former journalist.
Yes.
I was working journalist back when Richard Prince was a young man, which was quite a long time ago. Monica, I live in Miami and want to be the latest voice to welcome you to Miami and to tell you how glad we all are that you're here and how much we're looking forward to the way you're going to shape the newspaper here. So, welcome. And by the way, you've gotten here at a propitious moment, given what happened on South Beach the other night. So,
what happened on South Beach?
Welcome to town.
What happened on South Beach?
Well, it's spring break.
Oh.
And a bunch of young Black people came down to Miami and sort of took over a chunk of South Beach. And last night we're greeted by the Miami Beach Police Department's pepper spray, their SWAT vehicle, and their military uniforms. So you had one of these things where, in fact, the kids were out of hand. I mean, there's no question about it. The kids were a little out of hand. But the response from the police force was vastly disproportionate. Again, welcome to America, right?
Well,
I think I saw Kenny Walker on this.
Yes.
But I just wanted to say hey to K-Dub as well.
Okay. By the way, the lead story in the New York Times today is about how police treat Black Lives Matter protests around the country. I haven't read it yet, but the headline said it was very unevenly, which we all know, but it's nice to have that documented and leading the Sunday New York Times. Okay, anybody else?
Richard?
Yes. I'm sorry, we didn't get back to you.
When we talk about disinformation, we're doing a media forum for journalists in a couple of days about the COVID and vaccinations. And what we found is that among many Hispanic communities, we can combat the disinformation if it comes from Spanish language media, because they trust the Spanish language media more than they trust the English language media for many different reasons. And when I think about that, I think about basically the lack of a presence in newsrooms. Basically, most newsrooms in this country are bare bones at this point. They're cut down to nothing. And I remember the days when I went to the Miami Herald where every single piece of soil in Dade County was covered by somebody. I mean, we had so many reporters. So to Rebecca's point, the presence was there, and that's how you develop trust. So now the way the things are now, I'm thinking about what challenge do we have? How can we develop the trust when we don't have that presence? Like Mike was talking earlier about News Literacy Project having a component for the general public. Given today's dynamics in newsrooms and the fact that there's so many fewer reporters than there used to be, local reporters, how do we develop that trust in today's environment? I'm just trying to think. I don't know the answer. I'm just trying to figure out, there's a new reality when we're trying to develop trust among an audience and among publics. And I'm trying to wonder, those of you who have thought about this, if you have any ideas.
I could speak a little bit to that. So one of the things we started doing at the Miami Herald is having a series of community listening sessions. We have invited people and we've had some roundtables that have up to a dozen or so or more people who we've given an opportunity to tell us about what we're missing. Because you're right, the room, when I was in Atlanta, when I first started in Atlanta, that would have been 15, 16 years ago, we had over 500 people in the newsroom. When I left, we had 120. And we know the reasons for why that happened. But the impact of that is, like you said, that we can't be in all those places. But I would tell my newsroom that we can't use that as an excuse, if you will, that they have to change the way they're reporting, change who they're asking questions to. But we also have a responsibility to do things like these listening sessions. And, when we did one, somebody said, don't just do it, bring it to us, come to us, and don't stop, right? I think a lot of these things happened after 2020, after the racial reckoning we went through. And one of my greatest worries is that it's a momentary check off the box thing that we do this, but we have to make it a part of our ongoing mission all the time from now on, right? But I would offer that as one solution that we've tried, which is these constant monthly listening sessions where we're reaching out and talking to people we haven't talked to before, or that we stopped talking to, and people that have lost, where trust has been lost. And that's just one tactic. There are others, but I think it has to be a very intentional approach. You have to be very intentional about what you do, and can't wait for it to come to us.
Monica, can I ask Monica real quick? Did you do that over Zoom? And did you just invite a bunch of people and someone moderated? Can you elaborate how you guys?
Yes, so we have been doing them by Zoom, and we've experimented with different times of day and in the evening. They're moderated by Nancy Ackram, who is our editorial page editor. And we are very intentional about not making it where we are delivering information, but that we are indeed listening. And so the questions are very open-ended. What is your experience? What is your experience with the Miami Herald or not? And people have been very candid and very direct. We don't record the sessions. I have also made a point of making sure that the conversation does not end there in that 2 hours, but that we take it back to our newsroom and tell them what we've heard, so that something can change, right? If it's just a talk, that's great. But what we want to come of that is some actual change out of it, change in our behavior, change in the way, in the language that we use and the things that we do. And so we turn those sessions back around to the newsroom and say, here's what we heard. And then the people that we do talk to are people who are, they haven't shown up in our sources. They haven't been used. We did not too long ago, a content audit. In fact, he does a regular content audit of its content. And those audits show what you would think they would show, right? We're talking to the same people all the time, the same officialdom. We're not going into the community. And so what this is also doing is building up new sources. And these are people who have been around for years. They aren't new to the community, but for some reason, we haven't been talking to them. And so they've been very honest in our conversations, but that has been the approach. We do an invite. We open it up to about 25 people that are based on people we get word of mouth, or people we know, or people on our source list, and we reach out to them. And then we've had 4 of them, and they have bubbled. They bubble because people say, hey, I was on this panel. You should think about participating. So that's how they work.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would just add to Yvonne's question, I think another small thing you can do that's sort of related to what Rebecca and Monica were talking about is we have a program called Newsroom to Classroom where you can sign up, you can speak to students, you can answer their questions. They'll be fascinated in the work you do, and it'll create a real bond and connection. It's something that can stick with the student for a long time. So I put a link in earlier and hope you'll consider doing that.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is consistency. I mean, I remember doing part of my job when I first joined the Times Union in Rochester was the minority affairs reporter. That included everything that was not white or mainstream or anything else. And I remember part of my job really was to organize these sessions that Monica's talking about. We did them back in, 30 years ago with people in Rochester. And they went well for a while, but then they kind of dropped. But then when I was with the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, we had a parody project where part of the project was having these sessions, sometimes large sessions. I mean, we had 150 people show up in Southern California and 100 show up in Phoenix, where people got to talk to us. And what we found in the places that were more successful in establishing that connection were places where the media made it a consistent thing, you know, where they didn't have one or two sessions and just dropped off. They actually made it something as part of their programming, part of their editorial coverage. And that was what was more, you know, successful. And what I worry about now is that the connection between many mainstream newsrooms and the audience just seems to be broken, because there aren't enough people out there in the community, you know, enough reporters out there. So that was just my concern.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would like to say that I think that what the brother just said is that the journalist organizations like NABJ, they could have programs where they would invite, you know, when they get together or have a conferences or something like that, but have regular programs where they meet with the public and let the public really make them aware of what the problems that journalists have, and maybe help maybe they could be of assistance in helping the journalists as they try to get a broader coverage of the community. But at least if they would have at their meetings always have some time devoted where the members of the public can come in and sit and participate and ask questions and
you know, I think NABJ has had town halls before the convention began. I think it was like the day before, and that served that function.
A lot of local chapters also have programs where they met directly with parts of the community to tell them how the media worked and to let them ask questions and things of that sort. I'm pretty sure they've done it in Philadelphia, probably New York too, and other chapters.
It's also helpful if journalists can be given or learn to develop other sources that are real people, as opposed to simply Googling for information and copying whatever they find. That is one way of connecting and getting a different perspective instead of going back to the same white sources all the time.
Oh, Roger, now we got you.
I changed computers.
Introduce yourself. And I wanted to be sure we did this because the subject of the environment came up earlier.
Well, I just rotated off the board of directors of the Society of Environmental Journalists. And I was on there for 9 years. I've been a journalist for 55 years, most of it in print, but I worked in all forms of it, including PR for this little company called Exxon. And back in '68, when I first wanted to freelance overseas, I went to the only old professional journalist that I could find, a guy named Peter Bailey, and asked him for advice on, you know, just how to find stories if I was overseas. And he was, you know, very nice and gracious to this, you know, upstart kid who was about to get on a plane.
Very good, very good. Okay, well, glad we got to hear from you. All right, we're going to wrap this up, I guess, if no one has any final thoughts.
Well, I just wanted to give a final thought, Richard. When I was editor, well, actually, when I was a Washington correspondent for NNPA, for the NNPA News Service, and my editor-in-chief was George Curry.
Oh.
Rest his soul.
Yes.
George used to say something to me when he was making an assignment specifically on a civil rights story or a particularly a story that was particularly connected to the Black community. He would always, and instead of advising me on who to call to interview, he would just say, just call the usual suspects. And when he said that, I knew that meant Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Mark Morial, he would just call the usual suspects. But there was a reason for that. And George was meticulous. He had a reason for everything that he did. The reason is that those are some of the people that are trusted in the Black community. And some might agree, but when it comes to those, that's why Al Sharpton is still on TV and radio. That's why Reverend Jackson is still out there. And so is Mark Morial, head of, and so to try to reinvent the wheel in that particular area would sort of be looking for less than excellent sources on particular issues. It's just those particular issues that some specific issues that he would ask me to do that. So I just wanted to be clear that sometimes we don't need to try to find new sources. Sometimes the sources are already there based on experience and trust in especially the African American community.
Okay. And that's why we're in a lot of the trouble that we're in today, because of that, doing just that. 50 years.
If I could just say to that,
50 years from now, 50 years from, it's 50 years from later, and you could not see one single thing that either one of those people has built. Not a school, not an institution, not a business, not nothing. They have built absolutely nothing, neither one of them.
I think we just have to remember that we're not, I think the Congressman said it earlier, we're not monolithic, right? And what I've heard in these listening sessions, for instance, as an example, often you see in newspapers and in media, people refer to Black leaders, religious leaders, as the voice for the Black community, as an example. And we do have to, Hazel, I hear you, but I think we do have to branch out, because that is how we grow our trust, by not going to the same voices all the time. And I hear you on that. That is where trust lies. But we have to expand that. We have to go beyond that in order for people to find us credible. Because I think it's because we've gone to the same people all the time that we are in some cases where we are.
Nothing. And I like to just throw out the final point. From my perspective, I think what Monica is saying is absolutely true. What Rebecca is saying is absolutely true too. You got to get out there and pound the pavement and actually cultivate these sources before you actually need them. But as someone who is, now transitioning, going from, I spent 18 years at NPR, and part of the reason why a lot of media outlets are covering similar stories is, you see something in the New York Times, you see something in the Washington Post, and you have editors breathing down your neck, like, where's our story? So the first thing you do is let me call somebody who I know is going to call me back. And it's not, and you would love to dig deeper, but if you haven't made those inroads ahead of time, then you end up calling the same people, because instead of trying to advance the story, you're basically trying to duplicate the story so you can get it up on the webpage, so you can get an editor off your back. And I would love to say that journalism has moved in a direction where an editor is going to give you an assignment and give you a couple of days to work on it, but that is not the reality of the landscape now. It's I need this within an hour. I need this within the next 20 minutes. Go. And what ends up happening is you text somebody, yo, I need to talk to you now. Can I call you? And usually it's just people who have press operations. It's the people who have, you already have a number stored in your phone. So you're really up against the gun. So, when you're thinking about the next roundtable, Richard, can we get some gatekeepers in here to say, hey, you know what? Let's not duplicate this story that the New York Times, started working on 3 days ago and got it up, and now we're all chasing them. Let's find out how we can really think about a story that we can push forward ourselves. And that's a real dilemma. And I got a big mouth, and I've pissed off a lot of editors, because I'm I don't want to duplicate somebody else's story, but it doesn't always work, and I got bills to pay too, so I'm not trying to get fired in it.
And Braxton, one of the things that I suggest for you, especially when I know what you're talking about, the story over here, and you don't want to copy the same story, but you want different voices, maybe the similar theme, but different voices. I say lean on the other journalists of color. I mean, feel free to contact me. Of course, I have the home number for the president of LULAC. because he's in Dallas, right? Or some of the biggest, more influential Black pastors in the country are in Dallas. Of course, I have them in my phone. And so if you want, whether it's Latino or Asian American or African American or Indigenous, Native American journalists, this is where we help each other, where you can go, hey, do you know somebody, maybe in Texas or in your circle? And obviously, if I introduce you, for example, to Domingo Garcia, who's the head of LULAC, he trusts me. I'm not going to connect a journalist who's going to make me look bad, right? So that's where I say, when you feel that pressure, lean on other journalists who may not be in your, I'm not African American, but I know I could probably call you and say, hey, man, I'm looking for this, can you help me out? And you're going to connect the dots, because I understand the pressure you're under. You understand the pressure I'm under. But feel free to do that, because when I introduce someone to a source of mine, of course, it's someone I'm already telling that source, I trust this person. He's a reporter, he's going to push back on you. I'm not here to be the spokeswoman for LULAC. I'm just here to say, Domingo Garcia, why aren't you guys doing this or that or whatever? But, I think there's a trust value. They understand me as a reporter. And so if I introduce someone like you, because you need someone in the Latino community or any community, of course, it's about helping us. So never feel that pressure. Understand there are other journalists of color and even white journalists who are there to help you open the door. Okay?
You're here. Okay. All right. On that note, that's part of the reason we're here, to network and help each other and all that. So thank everybody for being here. And after this is, after we end this, there'll be a chat transcript, which I'll circulate. And then hopefully shortly we'll announce the next roundtable. So thank you all very much. And thank you to all the people who are watching on Facebook Live. We're glad you're with us, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, all.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Thank you, Richard.
Will Al's presentation be up wherever we can get it? Will there be a link to it?
Yeah, there is. Well, actually, you can look now on Facebook Live and it's there, but we will have an edited version with, that will be posted on YouTube, and I'll send out the link for that.
Great. Thank you so much.
And also, by the way, the full hour-long version of what he said, I also put a link to that in the most recent email, and I'll send you that if you haven't seen it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's good.
Thanks,
He wanted the true sandwich and all the other stuff as well. All right. Hold on. Happy Sunday.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you.